The Wangapeka track crosses Kahurangi National Park from the Waimea Basin in the east to the west coast near Karamea. The track crosses two saddles, each over 1,000 metres, and travels through the beautiful beech-forested valleys of the Wangapeka, Karamea, Taipo and Little Wanganui rivers. This track was built between 1862 and 1899 after the discovery of gold in the Wangapeka, and has suffered from earthquakes and slips over the years. From here to Stone Hut, the track is classified as a route and in places is rough and can be overgrown. The weather forecast wasn't great, with showers most days, which meant stream crossings and the dark ford at the end of the track may become uncrossable. As we progressed past Slaty Creek, the track sidled above the Little Wanganui River, and in places chains provided security while crossing more exposed sections. Belltown Manunui hut was relocated in 2022, and one story in the hut book detailed a solo tramper travelling east to west, arriving at the previous location of the hut after dark to find no hut. It had been chopped to the new site that day and no signage had yet been erected. He spent a wet, cold night huddling in a bivvy bag. Having a fire had meant most started off the day in drier layers than they had arrived in, but the amount of condensation generated from so much drying gear meant we had water running down the walls of the hut. This was a common theme throughout the trip. We left the hut at 8 with the expectation of a long day, making our way up the valley to the Little Wanganui Saddle and down to Taipo hut. Intermittent showers and wet undergrowth meant it wasn't long before many were wet again, and the team were finding out the suitability or not of their gear in these conditions. On the odd occasion we had a glimpse up the valley towards the saddle, but for the most part we were under the wet, dripping canopy. We had a quick lunch at the gorge shelter and even saw a patch of blue sky before we recommenced our climb towards the saddle 500 vertical metres above us. As we approached the first of the two saddle tarns, we had a few steep sections before getting above the bushline and making our way up to the saddle. Looking back as we passed the second tarn, we even had a glimpse of the coastline 18 kilometres to the west. We arrived at the saddle at 2:15. just over 6 hours after leaving the hut, a cold wind had us quickly move back into the tree line as we made our way down the steep descent to Stag Flat, 200 vertical metres below the saddle. From here we had an easier 45-minute descent in the rain to a frigid Taipo hut. We quickly had a fire going so that we could dry as much gear as possible. It was just on dark as the last of our team of 9 got to the hut and hurriedly changed into some dry clothing. The weather and track conditions were quickly draining some of the team's enthusiasm, and tomorrow's forecast didn't do much to change that. Snow surrounded the hut as we started walking downstream in the rain, crossing multiple side streams as we made our way to the Taipo swing bridge. The track from the west coast to Helicopter Flat has little traffic if the hut books are any indication. Only 4 people through in April, 2 in May and only 1 before us in June. We got hammered by a short hailstorm as we climbed up to commence the sidle around the flanks of Mount Dean and into the Karamea River catchment. This section required extra attention with a few narrow slippery ledges around waterfalls and streams. Everyone was thankful for a short break at Helicopter Flat Hut to refuel, but we quickly cooled down, so before long we were back trudging in the rain. A few of the side streams were getting a bit high to cross safely, so we took a high route to bypass a few. The easy gradient meant the climb to the saddle was a breeze until just before the saddle, where the track unexpectedly climbed steeply, bypassing a slip. We reached the saddle at 4:35 in waning light, and as a few of the team were starting to display signs of mild hypothermia, we quickly started descending to Stone Hut. We started arriving at Stone Hut just on dark at 5:35 and quickly got a fire going, whilst a few quickly changed into dry clothing and tried to warm up. We were thankful that all the huts had a reasonable supply of dry firewood, so before long we had a roaring fire. Water was again running down the walls of the hut from the condensation from our sodden gear. The track from Stone Hut is classified as a track rather than a route up to that point. There was a noticeable improvement in the track conditions, permitting much faster travel. Cecil King built a slab hut in 1935. and from the 1960s spent every summer fossicking for gold until 1981. Doc restored the hut in 1991. A number of us had been wearing ponchos, which proved very effective in keeping us dry. I wore a lightweight ripstop nylon one over my raincoat, and I had dry upper body clothing every day, whilst most of the rest of the team was saturated after 3 or 4 hours. The Wangapeka was running much higher than usual, and we weren't confident that the dark ford would be crossable, enabling us to get to our shuttle. Most of us didn't want to spend a night tenting, so the call was made to get a chopper to ferry us from Price's Clearing to the other side of the dark ford. As we traversed the river flats, we encountered numerous long sections of the track where a herd of pigs had ploughed the ground looking for roots. A big thanks to Tony, our trip leader, for all the organisation and logistics required for this Heathy and Wangapeka tramp.